Hey everybody, I just wanted to make a really quick little video to talk about our tests and let you know about the content on the two essay questions on our upcoming test that I sent an announcement out about last night. So first of all, in general, I would like to kind of just mention about the answers on the essay questions so far. So most of you have done really well on your questions, and what I would like to see, what I've learned is as I do these essay questions, and not just in this class, but in my other classes. Um, and I was probably the same way when I was a student, so don't think that I'm like picking on you or anything, but I have to be really literal about what I'm looking for. In other words, you're going to do the bare minimum of what I asked for you to do. So, what I want in this, and I'll tell you what I'm getting at too after I describe this, is I want you to write enough to demonstrate your knowledge of what I'm asking. So that sounds like it's pretty simple, but I want to unpack that a little bit. So first of all, what I'm looking for in these answers is I'm not just looking to make it hard on you, but I'm looking to help you gain experience in your classes. So when you transition after you graduate to the workforce, that you're going to have success. So that's why I ask essay questions, and I want you to expand your knowledge a little bit with me and show me that you're actually getting this information and you're not just going and finding it in the textbook somewhere and copying and pasting, whatever the case. So that's why I want it in your own words, and I can pretty much tell when you copy and paste something. So I was a student once too, so I understand all that. I want you to describe in your own words how this stuff works. And one of the big parts of that is reading the whole question and answering everything that's asked for or what you think I'm asking for too. That's a big thing because sometimes I've learned to be successful at my job really is a lot of times you have to infer things. You can tell by what I'm asking kind of what I'm getting at, even though I might not always specifically say that thing. Like when I said in the question about where volcanoes and earthquakes occur, you know, you could take that as a very general question and just say, oh, they all occur around plate boundaries. Or you can go into a little bit more detail and say, well, you know, they occur around plate boundaries, and volcanoes are more likely to occur around subvergent plate boundaries, and earthquakes are around transform boundaries, that kind of thing. So I'm looking for your knowledge on these questions and how you express yourself. That's why I ask you to do it in a coherent paragraph. I want you to explain yourself like you're doing a job somewhere. And again, I'm doing that for your benefit. I want you to be successful once you leave school. I want you to kind of understand what the workforce is like, and that's why sometimes I think it's good that people like me are able to teach some courses because I'm not strictly a professor and do this full time. I'm actually in the workforce as well, and I've had an entire career doing jobs related to these things. And while you might not be going into this specific topic, which probably most, if not all of you, will not go into this kind of thing, it still translates into other jobs and how you express yourself and how you explain yourself. And that's really a good selling point to potential employers or bosses or whatever the case. It shows them that you have the professionalism and the knowledge to be able to not only know the stuff, but to express yourself as well. So there's your lecture on that for the day. That's what I'm looking for in your answers. So I want you to plan accordingly. When I say I want something short, that doesn't mean make it as short as physically possible. That just means I don't want you to write 3 or 4 pages on it, just going into crazy detail about a bunch of stuff you don't need to. Read the question, understand what I'm asking and all parts of that, and then answer that question. One thing that nobody addressed in your answers was one of the first questions, I think it was the first essay question, about Easter Island, the case study. I asked you for one of your comparisons to you compare the term creeping normalcy. Not one person did that, even though I specifically asked for that in that question. So be sure to read the entire question, and if you don't know what that is, try to find out. Go back and read it real quick. I know you have a timed test here, but that was only a 2-page case study. So the information was right there. You could have found it easily and made a correct correlation. And what I was looking for there is creeping normalcy was something, the scientists explained it as those people probably saw those changes occurring over time and they became normal to them. Well, that's happening today too. We're seeing a lot of changes over time. I mentioned that in the lecture for that chapter. In my lifetime, I've seen a lot of changes that, when I was a little kid, it was different. Precipitation events, temperature, things were different back when I was young. And if you can see that on a geologic time scale condensed down in one lifetime, a human lifetime, that's a pretty big change because usually these things happen very slowly, drug out over a very long period of time. Another thing I would like to have seen you hit on creeping normalcy is our media today. Social media, the news media, we've got all these people, you get all these stories online about conspiracy theories and climate change is a hoax and it's not really that bad, and you hear all this ridiculous, just contrary information, and it's purely based on personal agendas and making more money, and it's very confusing. So that creeping normalcy could also be lumped in with our social media today because that's relatively new in human history. I didn't have that social media when I was young. We had 3 TV stations and you watched the news. That's where you got your news. You didn't go out and find a YouTube video that suited your own personal beliefs. Everybody got the same information and could make decisions based on facts and not a bunch of garbage on YouTube or Facebook or whatever you're looking at. So, I'm done with that. So now, on to this week's test. So, I wanted to specifically point these things out to you because they are not in the textbook. If you watch my lecture video from it was chapter 11. I can't remember which lecture it was. It was on chapter 11, water resources. I'm going to show you 2 or 3 slides here that you need to be familiar with, and I would go back and watch that lecture video to go over this stuff. And the reason I am picking these 2 questions, one is it's not in the textbooks, you're not going to be able to copy and paste it. 2 is because it's local, and I want to make this as local as possible. And I've seen it. A couple of you are actually not from South Central, from the Bowling Green area. One, I know somebody's from E-Town, somebody's from Eastern Kentucky. We have karst all over the state. Now, I focus on the Bowling Green, Mammoth Cave area because that's where I studied and that's where I'm employed at South Central Community College. So that's where I'm focusing on. But just because I mention it's here and you might be in Eastern Kentucky doesn't mean that you don't need to know about karst or you don't have karst. I actually went to Morehead a couple months ago and did a presentation for the students at Morehead High School for my job. And we talk about Carter Caves a lot, which is in northeastern Kentucky. And that's a pretty big karst area up there as well. So, to the questions. One question I'm going to ask is talking about the contamination, susceptibility, in karst areas. So again, I want to review this just a little bit for you all. In karst areas, we have different types of aquifers. We have these aquifers where the water runs right into these sinkholes, pretty much directly through the ground, directly into the underground streams, and flows unfiltered to the base level river in that area. So that word I just said is very important, unfiltered. It does not pass through a lot of the pore spaces and rocks and or sediment like a lot of the water does that gets into aquifers. It's flowing just like it would flow into a river on the surface. So it's not filtered, so we're very susceptible to pollution. I went over a few examples in the lecture. I know I remember mentioning the Amish in one of those. Very important to keep those types of things in mind because the first question is going to be based on that. Remember, there is a water table here, and that's going to be the base level of these streams and the caves. However, at this water table, if you look at this water table, this would be the general level of it right here. This diagram's kind of cut down the middle, so it's not a straight line all the way across because the diagram's in 3D, but it basically goes along this line right here. That's the water table. So what that means is, in reality, scientifically, you can kind of think of it as 2 different water tables. It's the same level, but you got the free-flowing stuff, but also in the rock, where there's not a cave located. Say over here in this area, there's no cave passageway. The rock under this line is still saturated with water. It still has water in the pore spaces within that rock. So you need to keep that in mind. It's more typical of what we consider a more normal or typical aquifer in other areas, like the Ogallala Aquifer out in the Midwest. And we will probably see that again. That's another hint, probably toward our final, the Ogallala Aquifer. So keep that in mind. There's a case study in your book on that. There's not a question on an essay question anyway on that in this test, but keep that case study in mind. So what does that mean? So these red lines are wells that have been drilled, okay? So one of the questions has to do, what if one of these wells were deeper? How would that affect the water quality that you see in a well that might tap into this water over here in the cave versus a well that goes deeper and taps this water down here that's just found in the rock and there are no cave passageways yet? So I'm going to go back a few slides. I'm going to try to anyway. Here we go. This slide right here is going to be important in your consideration on this. Remember, this is a slide about groundwater and pore spaces and how the water slowly moves or occupies the spaces between the granules, either in rock, in bedrock, or in sand or consolidated material. Keep those things in mind when we talk about that question. Kind of linked to this as well. Not directly in this question, but you can see how fast water moves. You see it appears rock, and you still have groundwater moving through these rock layers very slowly, microscopically through the pore spaces between this rock. So that means if you drill a well down deep enough here, even though you pass by all the caves, you're going to be in an area down here where that water well will fill up with water in the bottom, and you'll be able to draw water out of that. So what I want you to explain is that water quality down here going to be better, worse than the water quality that you might find up here in this aquifer? That's the karst aquifer. Okay, so that's one of the questions. I'm giving you a heads up, and I want this in your own words. I want you to explain to me what the difference is in the two aquifers, and would that be cleaner, better water quality, safer? Would it be just as bad or worse than the karst aquifer would be? And then that other question is on this map right here, and I went over this map, and I'm asking you about this area. You see this is South Central Kentucky. For those of you that are not from here, this is Warren County. This would be Bowling Green right here. This kind of, it's a little bit tan on the map. That's supposed to be the city of Bowling Green. Okay? So this is Warren County. This would be Barron County. Barron River Lake is down here. You see all all the blue is surface streams or lakes. So you see all the surface streams. Allen County, Monroe County, Metcalfe County over here. This is Hart County. This is Edmonson County. And again, this is Warren County. Mammoth Cave National Park is located right here in this corner of Barron, Hart, and Edmonson. But you see, there is a lack of surface streams from this line running basically from the northeast to the southwest, where you see very, very few surface streams. So what does that tell you? What kind of terrain is that? Why are there very few surface streams in this area? Why do we have to be more careful in this area with pollution than maybe some other areas? The Corvette plant is located right down in this area. So why did we have that big hole open up in the ground under the Corvette plant? So all those things are going to be related to that question. So again, I've mentioned that in the lecture for this. I just wanted to hit on that in this short video, and that's going to wrap this up. Again, good job on the most part. Everybody's doing pretty well in the class, doing your assignments pretty well. Remember to make sure you look at the due dates on these assignments. I had a couple people that accidentally went over by a day, and I'll work with you all. I'm not that picky. This is a very, very short time. Like I told you before, this is my first bi-term that I've taught, and especially in this kind of class, I think some of my other classes might be a little bit easier. This is a whole lot of information, scientific information to take in a short amount of time. So I haven't really done a lot with Google Earth or anything yet with you all because I know you're busy enough right now. So we probably are not going to hit on that much this semester, the Google Earth part. It is a cool tool to explore and look into, and you can even take something like this, and you can look in Google Earth, look up Bowling Green, Kentucky, and you can look at the land through here and see a difference in the land cover that you see in this area. So that's going to be it for this video. Again, keep up the good work. If you need anything or have any problems, just let me know. If you have any problems with Connect, let me know. They've been really good about getting support to me, and I'm kind of figuring out as I go too how to do certain things and extend deadlines and stuff like that. So I'm learning with you all as well on that. So again, just let me know if you need anything, and keep up the good work. Thanks.